This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast, the show that unpacks fantasy, faith, and life. I'm Bryce Johnson with Harrison Zuckerberg, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while finding meaning and purpose throughout the fantasy season. We won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing as we provide fantasy advice and biblical encouragement. I'm coming to you from the Unpacking It Ministry Studio in Charlotte, North Carolina. Thrilled to be with you today on the show. We will let you know what we're convinced of. I think we're going to play a new game called Would You Rather, and we will also discuss the waiver wire and do fantasy shenanigans. We'll let you know who won the matchup between me and Harrison in the Unpacking It Best Ball League. Came down to Monday Night Football, or lack thereof. So we will discuss that in just a little bit. Encourage you to check out fantasyfootballfellowship.com. You can check out all of our content there. And if you haven't become a member yet, it's not too late. Enjoy the rest of the season. Become a member today, fantasyfootballfellowship.com. All right, so we begin each show with what we call a breakout. And so we take a fantasy concept, relate it to life, relate it to the Bible, and that is what we also do on our website that you can read. And so you can check that out and then discuss these topics with your league throughout the season. And so today, I want to talk about unpredictability. And we know as fantasy managers before the season, it's all about predictions. It's all about projections. It's all about guessing which players are going to be the best this year. And those are the players we draft and target. Then all season long, every week when we're making lineup decisions, it's all about projections. And all these apps give us these ridiculous projections as well, right? That we live and die by sometimes if we're not careful. Sometimes they're right, but we decide each week, okay, I predict, or the fantasy experts predict, or the NFL experts predict this NFL matchup will look like this, which then means the fantasy players on my team will either have a great week or a challenging week. And we then, make those decisions throughout the year based on those projections and expectations. Well, through 10 weeks, we are reminded how unpredictable fantasy football truly is. And the reality is, certain NFL teams, certain individual players on those teams are performing at a level that we expected, right? Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chiefs. All right, locked and loaded. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown. Yep, absolutely. But across the league, in general, there is so much unpredictability as we look at the entire whole of this point in the season through 10 weeks, but then also week in, week out. In some ways, it was predictable that the 49ers would have a great game against Jacksonville. But was it predictable that they would dominate that much? That was pretty unpredictable. That Travis Etienne wouldn't be able to get anything going. That Trevor Lawrence, did he complete a pass? I'm still waiting. I don't think he's completed one yet. And so there's just no denying that certain players will have better games than expected, and then they will have worse games than expected. It's so unpredictable. But part of it is what makes it fun, right? We like the unpredictability of fantasy because we can go into a Monday night game and not expect the Broncos to win. And then Cortland Sutton actually plays pretty well. Javonte Williams plays pretty well. And now all of a sudden your fantasy results might be different than what you expected. And so sometimes we win when we don't think that we'll win. And then other times we lose when our team is the clear favorite. And so all season long, you've probably mentioned something like this to yourself or to someone else. You say, I thought he was going to have an awesome season, but he's not doing anything. I thought his NFL team was going to be terrible. I misjudged his situation. I didn't see that coming. I never expected that. How in the world did that happen? That is shocking. I didn't plan for that. What am I supposed to do now? And so our predictions that we make week in, week out, or before the season, they tend to be wrong, right? Fairly often because fantasy football is unpredictable. And sometimes surprising performances are good and sometimes they're bad, but either way, it's so hard to control and predict what's going to happen throughout the fantasy season. And so as we relate this to life, we know this is true in life as well. Life is unpredictable. Our circumstances and situations that happen oftentimes are surprising, and it's not what we planned for. It's not what we expected. Something happens out of the blue, good or bad, and life is unpredictable. And so we find ourselves saying the same things that we say in fantasy. I thought that was going to be an awesome situation, but surprisingly, it wasn't. I thought that was going to be terrible, but it wasn't. I misjudged the situation. I didn't see that coming. I never expected that. How in the world did that happen? That is shocking. I didn't plan for that. What am I supposed to do now? And so today, as followers of Jesus, how can we best respond to the unpredictability of life and properly deal with the reality that we can't control everything or expect for every situation to turn out according to our own plan? And so, in some ways, the first step is just accepting it and acknowledging that God is in control and that it's not unpredictable to Him. Everything's very predictable to Him. And so, we can either choose to be frustrated by the unpredictability or choose to trust that God, in the midst of this life that's unpredictable, He knows what He's doing and He's got us and that He's good, that He's faithful, and that we can cling to Him. And so we look at a few verses here in Proverbs 19:21. It says, "You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail." And so we can plan and make projections and expect certain things to happen and all of that. But we have to understand that God's purpose, that God's will is going to prevail. And that's good. That's awesome. We celebrate that. And so it doesn't mean that we don't plan anything or but we understand the reality. And just like fantasy football, of course, we've got to make projections and plans and all that. But then we just understand that, man, fantasy football is going to happen. It's unpredictable. And so we embrace it and understand it. And then again, in Proverbs 16:9, it says, "We can make our plans, but the Lord determines our steps." And so we must surrender to Him and trust Him. And day in, day out, we know that things are going to come at us that we did not see coming. Whoa, I'm surprised by that. And so we can allow those things to derail us, or we can have peace in the midst of the unpredictability and trust God through it. And this promise is found in Romans 8:28. This is the amplified version. "And we know with great confidence that God, who is deeply concerned about us, causes all things to work together as a plan for good, for those who love God, to those who are called according to His plan and purpose." So do we believe that? Do we live by that? That frees us up. Then we trust that, man, He's got this. He's got it. He's good. He's faithful. He's got a plan. It doesn't make sense to me. I don't get it. I didn't see this coming. I don't even know what to do from here. But God does, and I'm going to trust Him, and He's going to show me the way. And so then we go to Proverbs 3:5 and 6, where it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take." And so today, let's be encouraged that despite life being unpredictable, God is good and in control and worthy to be trusted, and that we can surrender to His plan, to His will, and that He will walk us through the unpredictability of life. And He'll confirm when we need to go, He'll confirm when we need to stay, and we trust Him in that. And I don't know what to do in this situation. He'll show us the way. He'll give us the clarity when we need it in His timing. And so, do we trust Him? Do we trust Him? Again, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. He's the one that knows. We can try to project and expect and plan. He's the one who knows. So let's trust Him. Let's trust him. So there you go. That's this week's breakout. It's so unpredictable, and hopefully you'll read the rest of the details on our website, fantasyfootballfellowship.com, and then discuss it with your league. We do an Unpacking It league on Wednesdays. I've got my church league on Wednesdays. We have some incredible conversations about these topics and just dealing with the things of life that we can relate to in fantasy and in our own lives. So there you go. This week's breakout. All right, when we think about maybe something that's most unpredictable, Harrison, I'm going to put you on the spot. What through week 10, what's maybe been the most unpredictable or shocking or surprising that has caught you off guard through 10 weeks of the fantasy season?
I mean, the most unpredictable thing has to be Josh Dobbs in the Minnesota Vikings. This guy had like 5 career pass attempts going into this season, traded twice in the offseason from Tennessee to Cleveland, then Cleveland to Arizona. And now he is a top 10 quarterback in fantasy this year. I think he's the QB7 right now, or 8, depending on, whether you're 6 touchdown versus 4 touchdown scoring. But the only thing that's kind of weird about it is I don't really feel good about starting any of the players actually on the offense that he is playing with, except for TJ Hawkinson. Back when he was in Arizona, he was putting up points, but we didn't really want to start anyone on Arizona. We don't know how we feel about Alexander Madison. Justin Jefferson isn't back yet in Minnesota. So there's so much unpredictability around his great performance because we know he's going to play great, or we think he's going to play great at this point. I'm still waiting for the week where he goes out there and throws 4 interceptions because I feel like it's just bound to happen now that he's playing like a top 10 QB. But we don't know who's going to be the beneficiary of that production every single week.
I do think Hawkinson is very trustworthy. However, he was questionable going into this game. I was texting with a buddy of mine, and we both sort of believe in this philosophy of when guys are questionable, leaning toward, I'm not going to go with him this week because I don't want to deal with him starting and then getting injured and being out because he's really not able to go. But the thing with Hawkinson is he's their number one target right now in Minnesota. And he's Dobbs' number one guy. He's the number one most talented guy. So if he gets the go-ahead, he's a lock. If he's active, he's a lock. And so when we play the questionable game, and I play this game often, there are certain players where you have to lock in. And Hawkinson would fall into that category for me because he's been one of the top tight ends all season long, very reliable. But I'm with you as far as the other guys on that team. And we will talk about Ty Chandler in just a little bit. But as we talk about unpredictability, this is why we have a segment that we call Fantasy Shenanigans.
Fantasy Shenanigans.
All right, Harrison. So let's talk about the other sort of surprises and unpredictability from this past week and some of the takeaways from week 10 in the NFL. And I want to, I guess, first talk about the running back situations. And we've been trying to predict and trying to figure out, okay, in Detroit, is it going to be Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery? Oh, man, Montgomery's awesome to start the season. Oh, he goes down. Oh, now Gibbs is awesome. So now they're together. What's going to happen? Oh, baby, let's celebrate because they're both awesome. Detroit is awesome. You just want to put players in your lineup. If they have a lion on their helmet, put them in the lineup. And so both of these running backs put together huge performances in different ways. Montgomery with the big play. Gibbs actually getting some goal line carries, getting into the end zone a couple times. And catching the ball out of the backfield. So both those running backs are starters. It's great. We're loving life there. In Pittsburgh, we've been wondering, okay, is Jaylen Warren going to get more carries? Is Harris still going to be a part of the offense? Yes. The answer is yes. Both of them. They're both relevant. They're both worthy to start. Probably both as RB2s, RB3s, but they're both worthy to keep in your lineups. And the Steelers aren't going anywhere. They're playing well. And so both, and same with the Lions, playoff contention. And it's great too, if you own either of those players in these kind of committees, they're not getting worn down and worn out. That's why we'll talk about Travis Etienne. I'm concerned he's getting worn out. You throw him in there against the I was going to say against the Lions. I mean, against the 49ers where it felt like Lions because they were feeding on Etienne. Feeding on Jacksonville. So anyway, so that's my first big takeaway is thumbs up with the rushing attack in Detroit and Pittsburgh. What's shenanigans for you?
The biggest shenanigans for me this week was probably Monday Night Football because this is the I don't know how many weeks in a row we're gonna see this from Buffalo where they come out with like one strong drive, go right down the field, and it's like, all right, this is the Buffalo offense we're used to. We're used to seeing Josh Allen dominate. James Cook's getting involved on the ground, and then what happens after like the first quarter? Josh Allen forgets that there's a defense on the field and throws the ball wherever he wants, whether there's triple coverage there or not. I have no idea what's going on in Buffalo. And then on the other side of it, the Broncos were gifted the ball in Buffalo territory, or at least at the 50-yard line, 4 different times, and they couldn't come away with any touchdowns except for the one Cortland Sutton incredible touchdown in the beginning, and then the Javonte Williams touchdown at the end, which leads into my fantasy shenanigans. I thought I had a pretty safe matchup against you going into Monday Night Football. I was up by about 24 points, I think. You had Javonte Williams playing. It was okay for a while, but then that last touchdown really put me on my heels. I was like, wait, now it's a 2-point game? Luckily, Javonte Williams did not come back into the game for the rest of the game, and it was the Samaje Perine show. So I'll get your take on that, about how you felt about Javonte's big day, then for it to be all for naught towards the end.
So I fell short to Harrison in our big best ball matchup, and so I thought I was happy with Javonte. He played well. Yeah, it would have been awesome down the stretch. Give him a little more love. The disappointment for me was Jacoby Myers this week, and here's what we have to realize: the Jets defense is very, very good, and it shuts down wide receivers. And so the week before, the LA Chargers Justin Herbert couldn't do anything against the Jets. And we're like, oh no, what's wrong with Herbert? He just dropped 36 points against Detroit. He's fine. Keenan Allen, huge day. Quentin Johnston got in the end zone. And so on Sunday, it was the Raiders. So anyway, in our matchup, Jacoby Myers, I needed him to at least do something, and I was counting on him to kind of get me back into that matchup. Didn't happen. But it spoke to this Jets defense still getting it done.
You talk about Jets defense getting it done, and how with Justin Herbert, he's going to be fine. He gets an easier matchup against the Lions, drops 36 points. But for Josh Allen, he now has to go play this Jets defense next week. So is it going to get better for Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs and James Cook? The one bright spot, though, is that Dalton Kincaid has been amazing for fantasy. This worked against me. I was going against Dalton Kincaid, and I had James Cook playing, and I needed James Cook to outscore Dalton Kincaid last night. That did not happen. Once again, Latavius Murray just ruins the day for all James Cook owners. I think he had like 12 carries for over 100 yards, but they took him out every single time he got inside the 10-yard line, which has just been so devastating all season because he hasn't been able to have that true breakout campaign with only scoring, I believe, one rushing touchdown on the year.
Yeah, the Bills are the weirdest team this year. And we talked about unpredictability. The Bills are unpredictable. But Dalton Kincaid, he's living up to the hype as a rookie tight end, coming in, doing a really nice job. One last thing, kind of, I was going back and forth in my lineup on Sunday, and it's a team that I'm just fighting to stay alive. And I decided at the last minute to put in Keaton Mitchell. Last week, I did not play him. Had a huge day, his breakout performance. Yes, I had him before he went off. That's the key. You got to get these backup running backs before they go off. And then this week I did at the last minute put him in the starting lineup, had a very nice day. And now the talk coming out of Baltimore is that they want to get Keaton Mitchell involved even more. But the shenanigans was all of a sudden he popped up on the injury report with a hamstring injury. You know how I feel about hamstrings. I want to avoid them, especially when it's speed guys. But I was kind of desperate and wanted to get Mitchell out there to see how he'd follow up to his big performance. And he got into the end zone again, another big play. Basically, every time he touches the ball, he's electric. So I'm excited to now I'm going to keep him in my lineups. It seems like him and Gus Edwards, the 1-2 punch. Again, back to my 1-2 punch philosophy. Baltimore's got it too. And so Keaton Mitchell's the real deal. And then lastly, I had a feeling that Trevor Lawrence was going to struggle against San Francisco. Steve Wilkes coming down to the sideline, making a big deal about some adjustments they were making on their 49ers defense. It worked. They had Chase Young. They absolutely dominated Trevor Lawrence. So I sat Lawrence this week, but I started Derek Carr instead. And then, of course, Derek Carr has to get injured. And when they finally felt like, all right, they're going to turn things around the second half. We'll get some things going against Minnesota. And Carr goes down, and he finishes with 5 points. Trevor Lawrence with negative points. So it's still the right decision, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. I ended up winning. So unfortunately, I lost to you, Harrison, but I went overall 4-1 on the week. So you got me. So I got to give you the love for that. All right, so plenty of shenanigans from the weekend. I mean, you talk about the Cowboys. Your boy Brandon Cooks finally has a breakout performance.
I've had to start Brandon Cooks the last few weeks. Now that wasn't an issue in my flex because he had 15 points and 14 points. But then last week he had 1.7. So I had to take him out because there's no way I'm going to keep him in my starting lineup with 1.7 points. Going against the Giants, I think it's going to be a blowout. He's probably not going to get that many pass attempts. They're just going to run it. And then he goes for 32 points, pretty much outscoring the previous 9 weeks of the season combined on my bench in a game that I needed to win. If I'd put him in, I would have won, obviously, because it's a difference between 32 and I think whoever I started my flex only scored like 8 or 9. But that was just devastating from Brandon Cooks. And I know next week, I'm going to be like, all right, do I put him in? Do I not put him in? And he's probably going to have 2.6 points next week on like one catch. So yeah, that was unpredictable that he would have a career game pretty much after dropping only 1 point the week prior.
Yeah, the Cowboys, I mean, CeeDee Lamb's the one reliable guy, and we'll have to talk about Tony Pollard later, but as much scoring has taken place in Dallas outside of CeeDee Lamb, it's just hard to know week in, week out who else it's going to be. Because even Michael Gallup, you got to consider him a little bit. And then now Ferguson, tight end. So a lot of weapons there in Dallas, but at least Cooks got going in a big way. All right, let's do some accountability and confession here on the show. We admit when we're wrong, and also acknowledge when we're right. We confess when we're right too. So we do a little bit of both. I want to talk about a few players that I passed on the waiver wire, that I overlooked, that I disregarded. And I was feeling the heat on Sunday going, oh, I blew it. So Noah Brown in Houston. I'm a Nico Collins guy, put him on my, IR spot. He was out this week, but I didn't even consider going to grab Noah Brown and to replace the production that I normally get from Collins with Noah Brown. But once again, Noah Brown has a big week, and CJ Stroud you mentioned it last week and it caught me off guard. You're like, he's an MVP candidate. What's everybody talking about this week? He's an MVP
candidate. Exactly.
You were ahead of the game on that because you said that. And I go, wait, is he? Yeah, I mean, maybe.
I mean, they're a playoff team right now. They are in the wild card if the season ended today. I mean, I don't know anyone else in the league right now besides like Patrick Mahomes, who's taken a 3-win team from last year and bringing them to a playoff contention. That's MVP worthy for me. And you look at the rest of the roster around them. Again, Noah Brown is the guys that he's throwing to right now. Devin Singletary is his lead running back at the moment. Like, he is making it all happen and having a fantastic season for the Houston Texans.
So the acknowledgement here is, yes, you want Houston wide receivers. Go get them. Dalton Schultz, keep these guys in your lineup. They're reliable. This is a great team. They are a great fantasy team, no question. And they're now showing that they're a really good team. I heard D'Amico Ryans in the postgame in the locker room, and he's like, man, we beat a good team today in Cincinnati. And you know what, guys? We're a good team. Yeah, I loved it. It was an exciting thing. But that's the truth of this. But these guys are legit. The other thing that I got wrong was Ty Chandler was sitting on the waiver wire all week long. And I just, Cam Akers was on my roster. He got hurt. And I was like done with Minnesota. I was like, I don't want any running backs. Well, now Madison's a little banged up. We'll see kind of what the indication is on his injury. But Chandler came in and showed some burst and looked much better than I thought based on the Vikings going to get Cam Akers instead of just, hey, we got Ty Chandler, we're good to go. They went out and traded for Akers. And so I thought, bump Chandler down. Is he really that good? He's good enough. And like you said earlier, the Vikings are better than anticipated. And so I whiffed on not at least snagging Ty Chandler in a league or two. And then the other guy I passed up, Trenton Irwin in Cincinnati with T. Higgins going out. This is still a high producing offense. You want guys, if they got a Bengal on their helmet, you want them in the passing game. And so I whiffed on Trenton Irwin as well. But I will say I celebrated Quentin Johnston. I picked up Quentin Johnston. He got into the end zone. His stock is rising. Get Quentin Johnston in. I know the Chargers lost again, but that offense still looked pretty good. So any other accountability and confession for you?
Yeah. The biggest one for me probably is giving up on Packers playmakers in the offense, specifically wide receivers who I had picked up at the beginning of the season, like Romeo Doubs, Jaden Reed, thinking they were going to have big seasons. Then the last couple weeks, it fell down a little bit. But this weekend, we saw, again, touchdown for Doubs, touchdown for Reed. They are back. They can still produce. I should not have given up on them so easily. And they have a pretty easy schedule to end the season as well. So they will probably continue to produce. And then something that I said last week that I got right a little bit was that the Cardinals were going to show some life. Kyler Murray, he was going to go out there. He was going to ball. They were going to go and win their first game, which they did against the Atlanta Falcons. Unfortunately, it didn't translate to a lot of fantasy success for anyone like Michael Wilson or Hollywood Brown, except for Trey McBride, who had another fantastic game and is making me pay for not calling him legit a few weeks ago. He's probably someone who I would say is a top 10 tight end, have to start every week down the stretch from here on out.
I whiffed on the Cardinals as well. So disappointed. Yeah, Murray was better than anticipated, and he's rusty, so he could get better as the season goes on. I still don't understand what Arizona's doing. It's just a weird situation, so it's hard for me to understand. But yeah, Trey McBride locked in, but Marquise Brown did nothing. I think one catch. So he wasn't the beneficiary by any means. All right, speaking of who's legit, let's jump to the waiver wire. We only have a couple minutes left today. There weren't a ton of random people that scored this week or that we haven't mentioned before, but we'll go to New Orleans, and Jameis Winston comes in and throws the ball to A.T. Perry for the touchdown.
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
Is he legit? Are you going to snag him on waivers?
I don't know. I'm torn on this one because I have an I'm convinced take that kind of goes against this, but I would say that he is worth a pickup on waivers, especially with the Michael Thomas injury. We don't really know what's going on there. We don't really know what's going on with the Saints either, with Derek Carr and Jameis. And, are they one of these teams that they're in first place right now in the division, but they're 5-5? I could see A.T. Perry coming as a third wide receiver and having some big weeks down the stretch. So I don't think he's, startable right now, but I think he's definitely someone to keep an eye on and pick up. And if you don't pick him up, at least check the box score next week and see, okay, did he do it again? Did he go for 5 catches this week? Because at that point, then you really have to have him on your roster.
All right, so give us somebody that you're targeting on the waiver wire this week. Who are you hoping to get?
So someone that I'm looking to get, the obvious one is Ty Chandler, like you said. They want anyone but Alexander Madison, it feels like, to be carrying the football for them right now. So Chandler's priority number one. And then a sleeper for this week is Jalen Guyton, wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. I looked and it said he was rostered in like 0% of leagues. I don't know how that could be that no one in the world has Jalen Guyton on their roster. But Keenan Allen might not be able to play this week. And if you look at the Chargers wide receiving core, it is pretty bare outside of Keenan Allen. Quentin Johnson would then be the number one guy, and Jalen Guyton's probably the most veteran presence they have in that wide receiver room if Keenan Allen does go down. 4 catches, 41 yards, and touchdown this week. He's a big play guy. I could see him getting in and making some noise on the Chargers if he gets elevated to that wide receiver 2 role if Keenan Allen is out.
The one guy for me to consider is Marvin Mims Jr. And the big thing in Denver is that Jerry Jeudy is non-existent. And so all indications are they're going to move on from him. that, whether I guess, I don't know if his contract's up, but he's not really a part of the future. However, this coaching staff or GM drafted Marvin Mims Jr., who's a electric wide receiver. We saw a glimpse of that last night, but he's getting on the field more. We've seen some glimpses even earlier in the season. He's a guy to target if you got some room. And then one other guy, don't let Kenneth Gainwell sit on waivers. The Eagles are back from a bye. Make sure that he's at least on your bench as a potential flex here and there. And then if something did happen to DeAndre Swift, who he has a history of injuries, he's a guy that you want to keep an eye out for as well. All right, let's real quickly. We're gonna play a quick game of Would You Rather. And would you rather have Saquon Barkley or Tony Pollard the rest of the way?
This is a tough one, but I'm going to have to go with Tony Pollard just because I don't want anyone on the Giants. Tony Pollard, I have in some leagues and has been awful because he just gets 15 carries for 45 yards every week, and then the Cowboys go up by 3 touchdowns and they put Rico Dowell instead. But as they get down the stretch, games get tighter. This is a playoff team. They have an explosive offense. I still would rather have pieces in the Dallas Cowboys than in the New York Giants.
I agree. Would you rather have Travis Etienne or Devon Achane?
I think I would rather have Travis Etienne. I still have faith in the Jacksonville Jaguars. Etienne is the lead back there. I hope that Achane comes back and plays great like he did before he got injured. But we're starting to see some question marks from the Dolphins here. They haven't been as dominant as they were the first couple weeks. We all know there's the weird stat where they're 0-3 against winning teams and 6-0 against teams with a losing record. If they're getting in closer games down the stretch, are they going to be running the ball enough to see, 10 carries for both Mostert and Achane like we were seeing in the beginning of the season? Or is Achane not really going to be able to get a full workload and be more of a gadget guy? So I would go with the safety of Travis Etienne having that workload.
And I think it's Achane. I think I said Achane. Yeah, we're still another one of these Kamara issues. All right, so we'll wrap up with this. We'll do a little Would You Rather a little bit more maybe next week. But I want to give you the final word. What are you convinced of, real quickly, as we wrap up the show today?
So in a lot of leagues, it is the trade deadline. So you need to be looking at, okay, any under the radar moves that you could make of guys who could be league winners down the stretch. Because there's always that guy who's kind of an average player for the first half of the season, then completely breaks out during the last 5 weeks when you're in your fantasy playoffs. And for me, that guy this year is Rashid Shaheed. You have to go get him at the deadline. I know we've been high on him all year, but now that Michael Thomas is injured, he didn't have a huge game this last week, but he saw a season-high 9 targets as the number 2 receiver in this offense. If he's going to be getting 9 targets with the explosive abilities that he has, he is going to go crazy over the back half of the season. And right now, a lot of guys are probably valuing him as their wide receiver 4 or 5 because he's been so boom or bust. But if he gets the consistent looks, he's going to be great. And the Saints have the easiest strength of schedule for the rest of the year. They play the Panthers, Giants, Lions, Rams, Falcons twice, and then Buccaneers. Those are all games where Rashid Shaheed is going to have a good game script, and they're going to be able to move the ball against those defenses. So I think he is someone that you absolutely have to go trade for, because a lot of people would be like, oh, sure, I'll trade away Rashid Shaheed for a flex player. But he's going to be more than just a flex player by the end of the season. I think he's going to be a legitimate wide receiver 2 from here on out.
I like it. I like the take. We'll end it there. Great stuff from Harrison. Thank you so much for everybody listening today. Enjoy week 11, and then next week we'll have the Thanksgiving game, so that'll be fun as well. But thanks for being with us. I'm Bryce. I'm a fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans and fantasy managers who follow Jesus together. Have a great one. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast.